Fulgrim, to me, is one of the most interesting Primarchs. He serves as an example of one who is ultimately destroyed and driven mad by his unending quest to become perfect, his definition of which will change across his lifespan. In this video, the first of a series in which I plan to analyse all of the Primarchs, I aim to examine his growth, his ethos, and what he ultimately serves to represent in the stories set in the Warhammer 40k universe. This video is intended as something you can sleep or paint to, something to have on in the background, so there will be no sudden jumps, jokes, or loud noises. If you like what I'm making, feel free to like or subscribe and to comment below what Primarch you'd like to see covered next. The information that I use in this video is sourced from across the Horus Heresy books, but I would also like to credit the Warhammer 40k fandom wiki, which I used as a reference point for helping structure my retelling of this story. Where appropriate, I will be interjecting to include my segments of analysis, with the focus being on symbolism, themes, and most importantly, the growth of Fulgrim. Let's begin. Like the other Primarchs, at a very young age, still within his gestation capsule, Fulgrim was pulled away from Terra by the Chaos Gods, cast through the far reaches of space, ultimately ending up on Chemos, a mining world. From the very beginning, the seeds of who Fulgrim would come to be were planted. The world he landed on was one that had been settled during the Dark Age of technology, when human exploration and expansion was at its fastest and most reckless. As a mining world, it was a place of brutal practicality, where survival was a constant struggle. Chemos was a dark, drab place, constantly dimmed and dull, owing to the surrounding cloud of thick nebula dust. The people of Chemos had no joy in their lives as we would understand it. No art, recreation, or leisure. Every drop of energy and resource was poured into the effort of simply surviving. The people of this planet relied on off-world trade for their food and supplies, but with the presence of a prolonged warp storm, those same traders that served as Chemos' lifeline were unable to reach it, resulting in widespread famine. The resources of the world were waning, their needs outpacing their production capabilities, and so to combat this, in a desperate bid for survival, every man, woman, and child who could stand were made to work at fortress factories, labouring and toiling through every waking hour in synthesizers and vapor mines to produce the needed resources. It was in this time of desperation and destitution that Fulgrim arrived, dropped to the surface of Chemos by the powers of the warp. Inhabitants of the world, a police force known as the Caretakers, found him soon after the impact, and were immediately struck by his beauty. For the people of this world who had experienced nothing but grit and grime as they toiled just to survive, the unique arrival and visage of this child was something that prompted a unique response. On Chemos, burdens were not tolerated. Orphans were routinely put to death due to the extreme scarcity of resources, but the Caretakers felt compelled to save this child. They took him before their leaders, the executives, and begged for him to be spared. Likely due to both his strangely pristine physicality and the nature of his arrival, he was allowed to live, given to one of the Caretakers to raise as his own. The stories of most, if not all Primarchs, have Christ-like comparisons that can be easily drawn. Primarchs arrive at their worlds without explanation, without natural birth, and tend to come to be heralds of change, becoming champions, kings, or to be revered as gods. Similarly, Fulgrim was named after a deity of the Chemosian people, showing that even at this early stage of his life, he was treated with reverence. Due to his unique genetics, he grew and matured swiftly. When put to work, he could outpace grown men, even as a child. Fulgrim absorbed the mechanisms he laboured with, growing to understand them with little difficulty. This understanding allowed him to become a mechanic, and in this, he was a prodigy. Fulgrim was able to modify the technology, enhancing its efficiency to extreme degrees. By the age of 15, he had risen to become an executive himself, governing an entire fortress factory. From this position, he had a full understanding of this ever-worsening plight facing the Chemosian people. The planet's population was declining, as was their technological capabilities, as resources ran dry. The young Fulgrim began directing the people of his fortress factory, Kallax, sending engineers on missions of reclamation. They located and refurbished old and disused mining outposts, and under Fulgrim's guidance, innovative and sophisticated extraction machinery was constructed and put to use. Through his ambition and intellect, he guided Chemos to a new age of prosperity. Fulgrim was in fact such a leader that for the first time in a generation, the planet's mines were outputting a surplus of supply, permitting them to buy food in great quantities from any traders who came close enough. He rose above his position as executive, recognized as the planetary leader, fostering a new age where the need for endless labor was finally at an end. He heralded a time where culture and art could re-emerge on Chemos. And it was beautiful. It's clear to see how his time and early life on Chemos shaped Fulgrim's outlook and values. Through being deprived of any and all forms of joy, he learned how much value it held to him after he finally had the planet functional enough that people actually had spare time and resources with which to create and indulge. It was only through his betterment of the machines and governing of the planet that he achieved this, planting the seeds of the strive for perfection that would come to consume him. There is a peculiar irony to Fulgrim, in that he, in his time of loyalty and service of the Emperor, can be perceived by someone who has only surface knowledge of his character to be prissy, pompous, or stuck up. And in the Horus Heresy books, we hear many of the other legions echoing those sentiments. While he does present himself highly and takes pride in his talents, from his roots in Chemos, we learn he was nothing more than a factory worker, toiling in dirt and grime, until he had the chance to learn and then demonstrate that proficiency through the betterment of the factory machines. We'll see his interest in machinery and metalwork come up again down the line of his story. The tales of many of the Primarchs after landing upon their separate planets hold similarities. Most come to be champions of their respective worlds, with many being revered as kings or gods. While the coming of the Primarchs to their respective worlds can all be compared to the biblical coming of Jesus on Earth, Fulgrim's holds many similarities. Religion does tend to have significant influence on literature, and I believe there has been in this case. Like a divine messenger descending from the heavens, Fulgrim's arrival on the desolate world of Chemos mirrored the profound significance of Jesus Christ's coming to Earth. In both narratives, there is a juxtaposition of humble beginnings and ultimate destiny. Jesus, born in a lowly manger, was destined to become the saviour of mankind. Similarly, Fulgrim, found amidst the harsh conditions of Chemos, was destined to become a leader and a catalyst for change. Both Fulgrim and Jesus exemplify qualities of charisma, compassion, and inspiration. Christ, through his teachings and miracles, captivated the hearts of many, offering a path towards salvation and redemption. Fulgrim, with his unparalleled artistic talents, charisma, and innate leadership, garnered admiration and loyalty from his followers, inspiring them to strive for greatness. Just as Jesus performed miracles as a testament to his divine nature, Fulgrim showcased extraordinary abilities and prowess in battle, solidifying his status as a formidable Primarch and a symbol of hope for the people of Chemos. The Emperor, often viewed as a godlike figure in the Warhammer 40k universe, can be seen as an embodiment of God's authority and power. Just as God sent Jesus to guide humanity, the Emperor orchestrated the creation of the Primarchs, including Fulgrim, to lead and protect humanity in a time of great peril. It wasn't long before Fulgrim's true purpose would become clear. From the skies came unknown ships, bearing strange symbols that none could recognize. When they were described to Fulgrim, however, he felt a strange stirring within. He ordered the newcomers be welcomed, and when finally he met with these guests, he found himself facing his father, the Emperor of mankind. Without hesitation, he dropped to his knees and gave himself entirely, offering his sword in service and swearing to serve his father and the Imperium of Man with all his heart. The Emperor imparted knowledge of Terra and the Great Crusade to his son, emphasizing the importance of uniting all scattered worlds of humanity under a single rule. This endeavor aimed to safeguard humanity from hostile forces and establish its dominance within the Milky Way. According to Imperial records, Fulgrim met the Emperor in 830 M30, coinciding with the completion of his flagship, the Pride of the Emperor. Accompanying the Emperor back to Terra, Fulgrim discovered a devastating accident had destroyed a significant portion of his gene seed cultivated from his DNA. This resulted in a slow and painstaking process to replenish the 3rd Legion's Astartes. Addressing the modest number of 200 Space Marines that had been created, Fulgrim delivered an inspiring speech, prompting the Emperor to immediately declare them the Emperor's children, and bestow upon them the honor of bearing his personal badge, the Imperial Aquila, on their ceramite chestplates. Driven by a fervent belief that they must embody the perfection exemplified by the Emperor and his vision for Imperial culture, Fulgrim and the Emperor's children became consumed by the pursuit of perfection. This encompassed their military tactics, an artistic legionary culture, and an unparalleled focus on aesthetics and personal appearances among the Astartes. Fulgrim himself personifies this pursuit, his long silver hair cascading down his back, welcoming eyes, and a melodic voice that charmed all who sought his guidance. His power armor, meticulously crafted with the finest Imperial technology, bore intricate decorations in the Legion's chosen colors of purple and gold. Additionally, he often adorned himself with a variety of exquisitely embroidered, high-colored cloaks. In the eyes of Fulgrim, the Emperor was the embodiment of perfection, a divine being to be revered and idolized. Much like the devout followers who see their spiritual leaders as flawless beings, Fulgrim's perception of the Emperor was one of awe and reverence. To Fulgrim, the Emperor represented the pinnacle of power, wisdom, and righteousness. He saw the Emperor as the ultimate authority, possessing unmatched strength and intellect. The Emperor's vision for humanity, the Great Crusade, resonated deeply with Fulgrim's own desire for order, progress, and the pursuit of perfection. Fulgrim believed that the Emperor's guidance would lead humanity to its ultimate destiny, free from the shackles of chaos and corruption. He saw the Emperor as a beacon of hope, a force capable of uniting all of humanity under a single banner of enlightenment and prosperity. Here, it seems appropriate to examine the physical design of Fulgrim. He chose the own colours for his legion, and thus the design of his own armour. When it comes to the core colours, purple is a colour traditionally associated with creativity, artistry, and the pursuit of beauty. Fulgrim, known for his artistic talents and appreciation of aesthetic excellence, used the colour to reflect these aspects of his personality. It served as a visual representation of his commitment to the arts and his desire to elevate beauty to the status of a guiding principle. The gold accents on Fulgrim's armour further reinforced his position as a figure of prominence and authority. Gold itself is often associated with divinity, enlightenment, and the pursuit of perfection. It symbolises wealth, wisdom, and the highest ideals. The inclusion of these elements in his armour underscore Fulgrim's aspirations for greatness and his beliefs in the inherent nobility of his legion's purpose. This is also the part of Fulgrim's history where he is given his position as Primarch of the Emperor's Children, a name that carries a heavy weight in terms of its implications, a weight that every member, Fulgrim especially, will come to struggle to bear. The name immediately alludes to the Legion's pursuit of greatness in all aspects of their existence. They seek not only martial excellence, but also perfection in art, culture, and personal refinement. They believe that through the pursuit of excellence, they could elevate humanity and honour their father's vision, and the name they bear. The strong bond shared between the Primarchs Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus, known as the Phoenician and the Gorgon, was widely recognised within the Imperium during the first era of the Great Crusade. Their connection was immediate, established upon their first encounter beneath Mount Nardina, the esteemed forge of the Urals. Ferrus Manus, the Primarch of the Iron Hands, was labouring alongside the Forge Masters, who had previously served the Terrawat clan during the Unification Wars, shortly after his arrival from Medusa. Displaying his extraordinary skill and the miraculous capabilities of his metal hands, Ferrus Manus drew the attention of Fulgrim, the Primarch of the Third Legion, the Emperor's Children, and his formidable Phoenix Guard, who arrived at the expansive forge complex. Neither Primarch had met before, yet they sensed the shared affinity for alchemy and science that had contributed to their creation. The artisans, filled with awe, prostrated themselves before these two mighty warriors, fearing a fierce battle might erupt between them. Ferrus Manus later recounted the tale to the Astartes of the 10th Legion, claiming that Fulgrim had declared in his intent to forge the most perfect weapon ever created, one that he would wield in the forthcoming Great Crusade. The Primarch of the Iron Hands, unable to let such a boast go unanswered, laughed in Fulgrim's face, asserting that his own living metal hands were far superior to Fulgrim's delicate ones. Accepting the challenge with regal composure, Fulgrim and Ferrus Manus stripped to the waist and worked tirelessly for weeks on end, the forge resounding with the thunderous strikes of hammers, the cooling metal hissing, and their good-natured taunts as they vied to outdo one another. After 3 months of ceaseless toil, both warriors completed their weapons. Fulgrim forged an exquisite warhammer, named Forgebreaker, capable of toppling mountains with a single blow, while Ferrus Manus crafted a golden-bladed sword called Fireblade, forever ablaze with the forge's flame. These weapons surpassed any ever created by humanity, and upon beholding each other's creations, both Primarchs declared their opponent's weapon to be superior. Fulgrim likened the golden sword to be legendary, like the hero Nuada Silverhands, while Ferrus Manus proclaimed that only the mighty thunder gods of Nordic legend were worthy of wielding such a magnificent warhammer. Without exchanging any further words, the Primarchs swapped weapons, sealing their eternal friendship through the craftsmanship of their hands. The weight of the formidable warhammer Forgebreaker was immense, almost unbearable for anyone other than an Astartes of the Emperor. Its haft boasted a rich ebony hue, intricately adorned with threads of gold and silver, forming the shape of a lightning bolt. The carved head took the form of a mighty eagle, its beak poised to strike, and its tapered wings resembling fierce claws. Merely gazing upon the mighty warhammer emanated a palpable power, and one could instinctively tell that its forging encompassed more than just skill. Love and honor, loyalty and friendship, death and vengeance,
All were encapsulated within its majestic form, and the knowledge that Fulgrim, the Primarch's sworn brother, had crafted the weapon was what made it truly legendary. Legend dictated that Ferrus Manus, commonly known as the Gorgon, earned his moniker from an ancient tale of the Olympian hegemony, though some on Terra debated its appropriateness to refer to a Primarch. Nonetheless, those who knew him best believed that Ferrus Manus rather enjoyed the name, for its origin lay not in that ancient legend, but in a nickname Fulgrim himself bestowed after their initial encounter. Unlike the Phoenician, Ferrus Manus found little interest in art, music, or the cultural pursuits enjoyed by the Primarch of the Third Legion. After the Primarchs had met at Mount Narodina, they returned to the Imperial Palace, where Primarch Sanguinius of the Blood Angels Legion arrived bearing lavish gifts for the Emperor, exquisite statues crafted from the glowing rock of Baal, priceless gemstones, and wondrous artifacts of argonite, opal, and tourmaline. The Lord of the Blood Angels had brought enough treasures to fill multiple wings of the palace with unimaginable wonders. Fulgrim, enraptured by the splendor, discovered a kindred spirit in his brother's appreciation for such incredible beauty. However, Ferrus Manus remained unimpressed, dismissing such indulgence as a waste of time when there was a galaxy to reconquer. In response, Fulgrim jokingly dubbed him a terrible Gorgon, suggesting that if the Primarchs did not value beauty, they would never truly appreciate the stars that they were destined to reclaim for their father. From that moment on, the name stuck, and Ferrus Manus became known as the Gorgon. The early bond between Fulgrim and Ferrus was characterized by a unique and profound connection, exemplified by their mutual act of forging weapons for one another. This bond not only showcased their camaraderie, but also symbolized the interdependence and synergy between their respective legions. Fulgrim and Ferrus shared a deep appreciation for craftsmanship and the art of war. Their relationship was founded on a mutual respect and recognition of each other's skills and abilities, and this shared passion for perfection in both martial prowess and the creation of weapons forged a strong bond between them. The act of creating weapons for one another served as a symbolic gesture of trust, friendship, and the recognition of each other's strengths. Fulgrim, renowned for his artistic talents and meticulous attention to detail, would craft exquisite weapons for Ferrus, tailored to his unique combat style and preferences. In turn, Ferrus, known for his mastery of metallurgy and weapon crafting, would create formidable and durable weapons for Fulgrim. This exchange of personalized weapons not only showcased their individual craftsmanship, but also reflected the deep understanding they had of one another's fighting styles, and the trust they placed in one another. The process of creating these was likely an intimate and collaborative endeavour, with both Primarchs discussing and refining the designs to ensure they were perfectly suited for one another. Fulgrim's emphasis on beauty and aesthetics, combined with Ferrus Manus's focus on strength and durability, creating a harmonious balance. Their legions could draw inspiration from this union of artistic finesse and practicality, forging a formidable alliance on the battlefield. While we hear details of the nickname of the Gorgon, we do not get the same for the Phoenician. Fulgrim's name itself carries a degree of meaning. In ancient history, the Phoenicians were a seafaring civilization, known for their maritime prowess, trade networks, and cultural achievements. They were renowned for their skilled craftsmanship, vibrant artistry, and love for aesthetic beauty. The Emperor's children, under the leadership of Fulgrim, embody these qualities and share a similar focus on art, culture, and pursuit of perfection. The name also serves as a reminder of the Legion's association with the colour purple. Phoenicia was known for its production of a prized purple dye derived from the murex snail, which became the symbol of royalty and prestige. The Emperor's children adopted the colour purple as their legion's livery, further emphasizing their connection to the Phoenician heritage. From the very beginning, Fulgrim yearned to make a significant contribution to the Great Crusade, just like his fellow Primarchs. However, due to the small size of his legion, the Emperor's children initially found themselves under the command of Primarch Horus, fighting alongside the Luna Wolves' legion. During their joint efforts in conquering and pacifying the eastern fringe of the galaxy in the Ultima Segmentum, Horus and Fulgrim formed a close and personal bond. Over several Terran decades, the ranks of the Emperor's children swelled with new Astartes, recruited from both Terra and Fulgrim's homeworld of Kamos. Their fortress monastery was established at the Kallax Fortress Factory on Kamos. Once the legion reached a suitable size, Fulgrim was entrusted with the command of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet of the Great Crusade. He embarked on his own path of conquest, bringing dozens of worlds under the rule of the Emperor. One such world was Laeran, an advanced Xenos planet where Fulgrim's destiny took a fateful turn. Fulgrim's fall from the Emperor's favour occurs here, officially designated as 28-3, the third world brought to Imperial compliance by the 28th Expedition. Unbeknownst to the Third Legion, the Lair species inhabiting the planet were corrupt worshippers of Slaanesh, the Chaos God of Pleasure. Despite the immense value of Laeran's resources to the Emperor's crusade, the alien inhabitants held the Imperium in contempt and refused to share their fortunes. When the Third Legion's advance was met with a violent resistance, honour dictated a forceful response. The 28th Expeditionary Fleet, led by Fulgrim, conquered Laeran for the Imperium by exterminating the hostile Lair reptilian species. The planet was an ocean world, with its continents submerged beneath the waves long ago. The Lair, a sentient reptilian race, resided on hundreds of floating coral islands, circling a central nexus in the planet's atmosphere. These islands were supported by anti-gravity generators, and the Lair engaged in extensive genetic engineering to perfect their different castes. What Fulgrim and his legion remained unaware of was that the Lair civilization had fallen to the corruption. The central nexus, around which the coral islands orbited, housed a massive temple devoted to the Prince of Pleasure. Within this temple lay a powerful chaos artifact, a beautifully crafted, single-edged daemon blade, serving as the vessel for a greater daemon of Slaanesh. The signs of Slaaneshi corruption were evident in the population of Lair, with their constant need for extreme sensory inputs and deriving pleasure from extreme sensation, including their own demise. Blissfully ignorant of the true perils that awaited them on this chaos-tainted world, Fulgrim commanded the Emperor's children and the forces of the 28th Fleet to assault and conquer Laeran within a single Terran month, effectively wiping out the Lair species. The Council of Terra had deemed the subjugation of the Lair too costly and time-consuming, estimating that it could take up to 10 standard years. There were even discussions of making Laeran an Imperial Protectorate. However, Fulgrim rejected such notions, as the Lair's refusal of the Emperor's benevolence had sealed their doom. During the final annihilation of the Serpentine Xenos race, Fulgrim and the Astartes stumbled upon a grand temple dedicated to Slaanesh, situated on the central floating coral island of Laeran. Unaware of the existence of chaos powers, and adhering to the rationalism and atheism of the Imperial truth, the Imperium failed to grasp the true significance of this discovery. Little did they know, the expedition led by Fulgrim was unknowingly falling under the temple's potent and malevolent influence. After defeating the zealous Lair defenders of the temple, Fulgrim made a startling find at its core. Within the chamber lay a circular block of veined black stone, housing a tall silver sword adorned with a curved blade and a crude amethyst gem on its pommel. This sword served as both a formidable Slaaneshi artifact and a physical vessel for a greater daemon of Slaanesh. Once Fulgrim claimed the blade as his own, the daemon residing within it began whispering in his mind, corrupting his soul and steering him towards the service of Slaanesh. Gradually, he began favouring the Daemon Blade over his previous weapon, Fulgrim's Fireblade. The mighty Fireblade, forged for him on Terra by his cherished brother Primarch, Ferrus Manus. Mistakenly attributing the whispers of the blade to his own inner thoughts, Fulgrim succumbed to the allure of what they offered. Ultimately, he realized what these whispers were, the insidious influence of the demon swelling within the blade. After much persuasion from his corrupted brother, Horus, who had already fallen to the ruinous powers following his injury on the moon of Davin, Fulgrim willingly embraced the powers of chaos. He found his patron in the Prince of Pleasure, who promised the Primarch a path to ultimate perfection, an existence free from moral constraints and centered on the pursuit of absolute self-obsession, both for him and his legion. The world of Laeran serves as the place where Fulgrim's fate arguably becomes sealed, even so early in his story. The home of the lair is described as a beautiful world, covered mostly in water, the clear skies and gorgeous architecture easy to imagine. When compared to Chemos, a dry, desolate world choked by smog that found no time for excess, it is only appropriate the fall would occur here. With the world having Slaneshi cults, the lair lose themselves in indulgence, music, art, and pleasure. While it is far from confirmed, I theorize that Fulgrim chose to wipe out the lair not only because they fought back, but because of what their planet represented in his eyes. Why should these Xenos enjoy such indulgent and beautiful lives when the people of his homeland could not? The Laeran blade serves as a clear signifier of Fulgrim's state of mind, his priorities and loyalties. As he begins to favour this corrupted Xenos weapon over Fireblade, the weapon forged by his brother, arguably his best friend, it truly shows how fast and far he is falling. During the latter stages of the Great Crusade, the Iron Hands Legion encountered a nomadic civilization called the Diasporex. Comprised of both humans and Xenos, they dwelled in a fleet-based society. The Iron Hands, followers of the Imperial Truth, offered the human faction of the Diasporex the chance to separate from their alien allies and join the burgeoning Imperium. However, the Diasporex declined the Astartes proposition. Faced with this refusal, the Iron Hands passed judgment. In the subsequent months, the Iron Hands fleet fought to annihilate the Diasporex. They proved to be skilled and experienced in naval warfare, easily evading crucial battles and inflicting severe damage upon the Iron Hands strike cruiser, Ferrum. In need of reinforcements, the Emperor's children of the 28th Expeditionary Fleet were summoned. A joint Imperial strike force, comprised of both Iron Hands and Emperor's children, launched an all-out assault against the defiant Diasporex. Despite knowing that a formidable fleet hunted them, they refused to abandon the sector and seek refuge elsewhere. Iron Hands scouts uncovered the secret. The Diasporex utilized concealed solar collector arrays to gather fuel from a star, explaining their steadfastness within the sector. Targeting these vital fuel stations, the two Imperial expeditionary fleets lured the Diasporex into open battle, as the human-Xenos alliance sought to evade utter annihilation at the hands of the Imperials. A massive naval battle ensued, during which Fulgrim's personal gunship, the Firebird, came under heavy attack and found itself in dire straits. Coming to his brother's aid, Ferrus arrived with his flagship, the battle barge Fist of Iron, rescuing Fulgrim from the imminent danger. In an attempt to restore his wounded pride, Fulgrim led a swift shipboarding action, unleashing the Emperor's children upon their forces and wreaking havoc. However, victory was snatched away when one of Ferrus's subordinate commanders seized control of the enemy ship's bridge. For many months thereafter, Fulgrim harbored resentment towards Ferrus, failing to comprehend the altruism behind his brother's deed and the sacrifice it had entailed for Fulgrim's legion. Influenced by the malevolent demon residing within the lair blade that he constantly carried, Fulgrim could only perceive his brother's actions as self-aggrandizing rather than the heroic act they truly were. What Fulgrim interpreted as Ferris's arrogant boasts and impulsive behaviours were, in reality, courageous acts that he spitefully dismissed, as the insidious influence of chaos began to claim his soul and blind him to the truth. This is one of the first times we see the true consequence of the corruption within Fulgrim. His worst qualities are gradually drawn out: jealousy, inferiority, and overall superiority complex. One of the most interesting traits of Fulgrim at the beginning of his story was how he remained humble and grounded, defying the stereotypes for himself and his legion. Gradually, by the guiding temptations of Slaanesh, he would become the worst version of himself, rather than achieving the perfection that he longed for. When Fulgrim was saved by Ferris from a situation that his own recklessness got him into, he perceived the action as a slight, as stolen glory, rather than a friend attempting to save him. This clash of ideologies between Fulgrim and Ferris becomes more apparent as the corruption of the Lair Blade takes a tighter hold. Fulgrim, driven by his newfound desire for pleasure and sensory gratification, began to view the Iron Hand's unwavering dedication to duty and their emphasis on the practicality of war as dull and lacking in artistic and aesthetic value. The growing resentment towards Ferris was fueled by Fulgrim's belief that the Iron Hand's approach to warfare was inferior, contrasting with his own pursuit of beauty, indulgence, and the pursuit of perfection. Fulgrim saw Ferris as a symbol of everything he despised, a pragmatic, unfeeling warrior, focused solely on victory and lacking in appreciation for the finer aspects in life. The themes involved in Fulgrim's resentment towards Ferris revolve around the corrupting influence of power and the perils of unchecked pride and vanity. Fulgrim's descent into chaos and his growing disdain for Ferris exemplify how even the most noble of beings can be led astray by their desires and lose sight of their original ideals, especially under the influence of chaos. According to certain members of the Inquisition who have meticulously studied the fragmented imperial records, it is now believed that the Laeran demon sword began to exert a significant influence of chaos over Fulgrim, the Primarch of the Emperor's Children. Additionally, it is suspected that the Emperor's Children deployed against the Lair may also have been tainted by their exposure to the concentrated chaos corruption of these serpent-like beings, who had fully devoted themselves to the service of Slaanesh. It was during this time that Fulgrim, grappling with his own corruption, found himself at the centre of events that would ultimately lead to the Horus Heresy. On the maiden world of Tarsus, Fulgrim encountered Eldrad Ulthran, a renowned Asuryani farseer from the craft world Ulthwé. Eldrad attempted to warn Fulgrim about Horus's injury inflicted by the chaos artifact blade called the Cainbran Shanathame, wielded by Eugen Temba, the planetary governor of Davin, who succumbed to the influence of the Plague Lord Nurgle. The wound inflicted on Horus had allowed the Chaos Gods to gain a foothold in the War Master's soul, and he was already succumbing to their service as he recovered from the near-fatal blow inflicted by the Cainbranch blade on the Nurgle-corrupted moon. Fulgrim reacted with furious indignation at the accusations made by Eldrad, driven by his deep bond with his brother, second only to the bond he shared with Ferrus Manus. The influence of Fulgrim's Daemon Blade further fueled his outrage, pushing him to launch an unprovoked and frenzied attack on Eldrad and his retinue, alongside the Emperor's Children captains and his personal Phoenix Guard. In the ensuing battle, the Emperor's Children slew the esteemed Asuryani Wraith Lord, Kyrene Goldhelm, and a powerful avatar of Cain as well. This forced Eldrad and the remaining Asuryani forces to sorrowfully retreat, realizing that Chaos had already claimed yet another of the Mon-Ki Primarchs. They succeeded in eliminating many of Fulgrim's elite, personal Phoenix Guard before their departure. Viewing the Eldari as a treacherous race, intent on dividing and conquering the Imperium through lies about its leaders, Fulgrim, increasingly influenced by the Demon Blade, ordered the 28th Expeditionary Fleet to destroy several other beautiful Eldari maiden worlds using devastating virus bombs. Though the exact timing of this meeting remains unknown in Imperial records, it is known that Fulgrim soon after encountered Horus in person after the Eldari warning. Fulgrim demanded a personal account of Horus's actions, but the War Master, utilizing his tremendous charisma, managed to sway Fulgrim to his cause and the service of the ruinous powers. Fulgrim's profound respect for Horus allowed chaos to infiltrate his heart, shattering his unwavering loyalty to the Emperor and replacing it with an intense desire to annihilate the man whom he believed hindered humanity's progress towards the perfection that he so desperately sought. Horus convinced him that only the Chaos Gods could truly provide this perfection, and that mankind would only attain it by fully embracing chaos. As a token of trust, Horus bestowed upon Fulgrim the potent Chaos Blade, Kindbrand Shanathame. Only the two brothers knew the true power of this poisoned weapon, as it was the blade blessed by Nurgle that had nearly claimed Horus's life. Horus commanded Fulgrim to meet with Ferrus aboard the battle barge Fist of Iron. The purpose of this meeting was to persuade Ferrus into joining Horus and the other traitor legions who had pledged themselves to chaos. While the majority of Fulgrim's legion and the 28th Fleet proceeded to rendezvous with Horus and the 63rd in the Istvaan system, Fulgrim and a smaller fleet assisted Ferrus in reclaiming the world of Kalanides IV from the Orcs. Deep bonds of friendship and brotherhood had long existed between Fulgrim and Ferrus, and Fulgrim believed he could convince Ferrus of the righteousness of Horus's cause. In reality, Fulgrim's hopes were tragically shattered. The meeting between the two Primarchs in Ferrus's inner chamber, the Anvalarium, took a disastrous turn. Ferrus was infuriated by the mere suggestion that his brothers would consider betraying their father, the Emperor. The encounter escalated into violence as Ferrus vehemently expressed his opposition to Fulgrim's intended betrayal. Using his metallic necrodermis hand, Ferrus destroyed Fulgrim's power sword, Fireblade, in a powerful blast that rendered him unconscious. Fulgrim, driven by the manipulations of the Slaaneshi demon entwined with his soul, set out to kill his brother using his own weapon, the Warhammer Forgebreaker. However, he found himself unable to carry out the act, despite the demon's urgings. Emerging from Ferrus's inner sanctum, Fulgrim signalled his guard, who swiftly executed all of the Iron Hand's present Morlock Terminators, who acted as Ferrus Manus's loyal bodyguards. The Emperor's children nearly succeeded in killing Gabriel Santor, the first captain of the Iron Hands. Fulgrim managed to escape the Iron Hands expeditionary fleet aboard his personal assault craft, the Firebird, by ordering his own flagship, the battle barge of the Emperor and its escorts, to unleash a surprise attack on the ships of the expeditionary fleet. This unexpected assault severely crippled their fleet, creating a diversion that allowed Fulgrim and the forces of the 3rd Legion to retreat into the Warp, where they would regroup with the rest of their forces in the Istvaan system. With their loyalties now firmly aligned and their paths set, the corrupting influence of the Chaos rapidly spread throughout the Emperor's children, starting with Fulgrim and his trusted lieutenants, the 2 Lord Commanders of the Legion, and then the company captains and squad sergeants, until only a small minority of the Emperor's children remained loyal to the Emperor, following the dictation of Slaanesh instead. The 3rd Legion's noble pursuit of excellence and perfection had been twisted into an insatiable craving for hedonism and sensory excess. While the Eldar had the foresight to try to warn humanity of the impending heresy, it is unfortunate that the message was delivered to perhaps the worst recipient possible. Those who know the history of the Eldar understand that in their prime they fell to Slaanesh, almost causing their extinction. Of course, this event is seared into the racial consciousness of the Eldari, as Slaanesh loves nothing more than the souls of Eldar. Of course, this would allow Eldrad and his companions an understanding of the struggle that Fulgrim was facing, but also may have caused them to fear him. That fear would prove well placed, as Fulgrim and his Phoenix Guard defeat the Eldar, besting Eldrad and killing not only a Wraith Lord, but also an Avatar of Cain, a feat not to be taken lightly. We can read Fulgrim's defeating the Avatar to be him proving his own wrath to be greater, but as nearly all of Fulgrim's Phoenix Guard are killed in the encounter, it becomes increasingly clear how little he cares for those he considers beneath him. His equals are his brethren, the Primarchs, and only the gods themselves are above him. For the perceived false accusations and treachery of the Eldar, Fulgrim then orders they deploy virus bombs on Maiden Worlds. In reading this, we need to consider the sheer extent of what he did to the Eldar, when all they were doing was trying to warn him. Not only does he attack and kill several esteemed members of their race, he then, simply in the name of vengeance and spite, salts the earth of their prized worlds with plague ordnance. It is important to consider here, what would Fulgrim have done here, were he not so corrupted by the Laeran blade? Would these accusations still have driven him to such murderous lengths? Ironically, the next major scene we see Fulgrim partake in is his meeting with Horus, where the accusations made by the Eldar, of course, turn out to be true. Rather than being met with rage or indignation when Horus asks Fulgrim to betray their father, Fulgrim is swayed to his side. This is no small feat, even given the Phoenicians' corrupted state. Horus had an innate advantage in this effort, though, as Fulgrim admired him deeply. Firstly, Horus was of course the War Master, the highest-ranking Primarch, and trusted by the Emperor to lead the Great Crusade. Fulgrim respected him for his strategic brilliance, leadership, and charisma. He saw Horus as a paragon of strength and vision, someone capable of achieving greatness and reshaping the Imperium whilst they both served it. He was drawn to Horus's side due to the shared ambition and desire for personal growth and achievement. As Fulgrim's corruption deepened, he becomes increasingly enamored with power, perfection, and the pursuit of greatness. Seeing these qualities in Horus, he admired and sought to align himself with the War Master, believing that by joining him, he could ascend to even greater heights. The corrupting forces that had taken hold of Fulgrim manipulated his thoughts and emotions, making him see Horus as a figure of inspiration and guidance. Chaos exploited Fulgrim's desires and vanity, driving him to seek validation and approval from Horus, further deepening his reverence for the War Master. It is here, in this scene, that Fulgrim changes his entire outlook in life. It had been readied for this paradigm shift by the influence of chaos, and now he changed his vision of the ideal of perfection from the Emperor of Man to Horus Lupercal. Fulgrim's attempts to turn Ferrus Manus to his side and the symbolic destruction of Fireblade carry significant implications for both characters. Fulgrim's belief in his ability to convince Ferrus of the righteousness of Horus's cause underscores the deep bonds of friendship and brotherhood that existed between them. The scene highlights Fulgrim's conviction that he can sway Ferrus, emphasizing his charisma and persuasive abilities. It also demonstrates the tragic flaw of naivety, as Fulgrim underestimates the depth of Ferrus's loyalty to the Emperor and his staunch opposition to the idea of betrayal. The symbolic destruction of Fireblade, Fulgrim's power sword, holds several layers of meaning. The Laeran blade has always been the manifestation of his corruption, while the Fireblade could serve as that of his loyalty and his bond with Ferrus. As Ferrus destroys the blade, it represents the shattering of Fulgrim's former self and his descent into darkness, as Ferrus cannot even stand to hold a weapon forged by a traitor. It signifies the breaking of bonds of friendship and brotherhood, as Fulgrim's once noble and righteous path is torn apart by his allegiance to chaos. The fact that the act itself is performed by Ferrus is a testament to his outrage and anger, as in this moment, the Gorgon feels fury, but also grief, as he has just learned that the man he respected and loved as a brother has fallen so terribly. Prior to Horus openly instigating his rebellion against the Emperor, a strategic command arose that would allow him to eliminate the loyalist factions within the Astartes legions under his command. The Imperial Planetary Governor of Istvaan III, Vardis Pral, had succumbed to corruption by the Chaos god Slaanesh, whose cultists had long been active on the planet, even before its conquest by the Imperium. Pral had declared independence from the Imperium itself, and had delved into forbidden Slaaneshi sorcery. In response, the Council of Terra tasked Horus with the recapture of Istvaan III, particularly its planetary capital, the Coral City. Unbeknownst to the Council, this directive served as an advantageous step towards Horus's ultimate plan of overthrowing the Emperor. Although the 4 legions directly under his command, the Sons of Horus, World Eaters, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children, had already turned traitor and pledged themselves to chaos, a considerable number of loyalist elements persisted within each legion, comprising roughly 1/3 of their respective forces. Many of these warriors were Terran-born Space Marines, who had been directly recruited into the Astartes Legion by the Emperor himself before being reunited with their Primarchs during the Great Crusade. Under the pretense of quelling a rebellion against Imperial compliance on Istvaan III, Horus strategically gathered his forces in the Istvaan system. His true plan was to eliminate all remaining loyalist elements within the legions under his command. After bombarding Istvaan III extensively, Horus ordered the known loyalist Astartes to descend to the planet, seemingly to bring it back under Imperial control. At the moment of victory, when the Coral City, the planetary capital, was recaptured, these loyalist Astartes were betrayed. Horus's fleet in orbit unleashed a devastating cascade of life-eater virus bombs onto the world. Captain Saul Tarvitz of the Imperial Emperor's Children had discovered the plot whilst aboard the strike cruiser Andronius. With assistance from Battle Captain Nathaniel Garrow, commanding the Death Guard frigate Eisenstein, they managed to reach the surface of Istvaan III despite being pursued. Tarvitz warned the loyalist Space Marines he could find from all 4 legions about the impending doom. Those who received and heeded Tarvitz's warning sought shelter before the virus bombs struck. Unfortunately, the civilian population of Istvaan III had no such protection. The lethal life-eater virus swiftly infected every living being on the planet, resulting in the simultaneous deaths of 12 billion people. The psychic shock of this massive loss of life rippled through the warp, momentarily obscuring even the Astronomicon itself. The Primarch of the World Eaters, Angron, enraged by the virus bombing's failure to eliminate all of the loyalists, led 50 companies of World Eater traitor marines into a mindless frenzy of carnage. Their allegiance to the blood god Khorne fueled their brutal butchery. Horus was angered by Angron's delay in executing his plans, but turned it into an opportunity for victory. He reinforced Angron with troops from the Sons of Horus, Death Guard, and Emperor's Children legions to destroy the Loyalists. Fortunately, a group of Imperium Loyalists led by Battle Captain Garrow managed to escape Istvaan III, aboard the battle-damaged Imperial frigate. They fled to Terra to warn the Emperor of Horus's treachery. On Istvaan III, the remaining Loyalists, commanded by Captain Tarvitz, Gavriel Loken, and Tarek Torgaden, fought valiantly against their traitorous brethren. Despite initial success that delayed Horus's plan for all of 3 months, the Loyalists were ultimately doomed due to a lack of air support and Titan firepower. During the battle, the Sons of Horus captains Ezekiel Abaddon and Horus Aximand were sent to confront their former Mournival brothers, Loken and Torgaden. Aximand killed Torgaden, but Abaddon failed to eliminate Loken when the building they were in collapsed. Loken miraculously survived and witnessed the final bombardment of Istvaan III, which marked the end of the Loyalists' desperate defense. Amidst the dire circumstances on Istvaan III, Captain Saul Tarvitz and Solomon Demeter valiantly led the remaining loyalists of the Emperor's Children's Legion. However, Captain Lucius of the 13th Company, who would later become the renowned champion of Slaanesh known as Lucius the Eternal, chose to prove his allegiance to Lord Commander Eidolon and his Primarch. Driven by jealousy towards Tarvitz for assuming command of their defence, he turned against his former comrades and personally slaughtered many of them. This act earned him acceptance among the traitors of the Third Legion. As the conflict reached its climax, the Loyalists were forced to retreat, with only a small fraction of their original numbers remaining. Horus eventually grew weary of the prolonged battle and ordered his forces to withdraw. To mark the finality of their victory, the Coral City was bombarded into oblivion from orbit. While the events of Istvaan III had little direct involvement from Fulgrim himself, he, along with all the other traitor Primarchs involved, are shown to be ruthless enough to sacrifice their own men upon the altar of heresy. Their only crime was loyalty, and the last stand of these loyalists was a tragic but noble act, as even though their own Primarchs had sentenced them to death, they stood together till the end, unbroken. During the closing days of the Great Crusade, just before the eruption of the Horus Heresy, Bekwa Kainska, a renowned composer from Terra, accompanied the Emperor's Children fleet as a remembrancer aboard Fulgrim's battle barge, the Pride of the Emperor. Kainska, a disillusioned musician, always yearning for new sensations to create more captivating and immersive music, became an easy target for corruption by Slaanesh. After joining the expedition's remembrancers on a visit to a Slaaneshi temple on the Xenos world of Laeran, the tainted environment influenced her, compelling her to compose the ultimate symphony named the Maraviglia. She believed this composition could capture the enchanting sounds she had experienced within the temple. The Maraviglia, performed for Fulgrim and the assembled Astartes of the Emperor's Children, took place in the Remembrancer's lounge and theatre known as La Fenice, aboard the Pride of the Emperor. To recreate the otherworldly sounds she had encountered, Kainska crafted new musical instruments capable of harnessing destructive sonic powers when played by someone who was corrupted by Slaanesh. As the performance commenced, the cacophony unleashed by these instruments served as a sorcerous ritual, creating a link between the material realm and the warp, allowing the touch of Slaanesh to directly influence the audience. The instruments produced disorienting, stimulating, and even deadly effects. The audience, who comprised of Astartes and mortals both, succumbed to chaotic mutations, overwhelmed by overpowering sensations and uncontrollable emotions. This ultimately led to a frenzied display of both sensual hedonism and brutal violence among the attendees. In a climactic moment, the music summoned 5 daemonettes, lesser demons of Slaanesh, who possessed the bodies of Kainska and several of her singers, joining the slaughter. Some Emperor's Children Astartes, driven by their fascination with the instruments, abandoned their seats and unleashed waves of destructive sonic power infused by the psychic energy of chaos. These Astartes would later become the first Noise Marines, wielding these unconventional weapons as a new unit within the Third Legion, known as the Cacophony, under the command of Captain Julius Caesarion. It was during this performance at La Fenice that the Emperor's Children fully devoted themselves, body and soul, to the Prince of Pleasure. When the Loyalist Salamanders, Raven Guard, and Iron Hands legions arrived on the Istvaan system to confront Horus and the traitorous legions on Istvaan V, the Emperor's Children eagerly joined the battle. Thousands of drop pods and storm birds were deployed for this assault. The first wave, led by Primarch Ferrus Manus, included the Salamanders Vulcan and the Raven Guard commanded by Corvus Corax. While Vulcan's forces assailed the left flank of the traitors, Ferrus Manus, accompanied by the Iron Hand's first captain, Gabriel Santor, and elite Morlock Terminators, charged directly into the heart of the enemy lines. Simultaneously, Corax's forces attacked the right flank. The odds appeared even, with the 30,000 traitor marines facing off against 40,000 loyalists. Horus, aware of the loyalists' chosen landing site, unleashed his troops upon them. The battlefield of Istvaan V became a nightmarish slaughterhouse. Betrayed warriors consumed by hatred clashed with their former comrades, creating a conflict of unparalleled bitterness. Colossal Titan war engines trampled the planet's surface, leaving death in their wake. The blood of heroes and traitors alike flowed in rivers, while the heretic adepts of the Dark Mechanicum, shrouded in hoods, unleashed twisted perversions of stolen ancient technology from the Auratian technocracy, wreaking havoc among the loyalists. In the Urgal depression, countless lives were lost with each passing second, as the inevitability of death hung over every combatant. The traitor forces managed to hold their ground, but their defensive lines strained under the relentless assault of loyalists. It would only take a slight twist of fate for it to collapse entirely. The second wave of supposedly loyalist space marines descended upon the northern edge of the Urgal depression, where the landing zone had been secured by the Iron Hands, Raven Guard, and Salamanders. However, these Space Marine legions of the reserve were no longer loyal, having secretly pledged themselves to chaos and the cause of Horus. The Night Lords, Iron Warriors, Word Bearers, and Alpha Legion, representing a larger force than the initial assault, amassed in the landing zone, fully armed and prepared for battle, untouched by any prior combat. Although the Iron Hands, Raven Guard, and Salamanders successfully made a combat drop and secured the Urgal depression, they suffered heavy losses before they realized that they were surrounded by the traitorous Brethren. In a devastating turn of events, the traitor legions launched a coordinated ambush, striking at the vulnerable rear of the Loyalist forces. The Night Lords themselves, masters of terror tactics, unleashed a storm of fear and panic upon the Loyalists. Their lightning-fast strikes and brutal close quarters left the Loyalist Space Marines disoriented and scattered. The Iron Warriors, masters of siegecraft, deployed their heavy weaponry and fortifications, turning the battlefield into a kill zone. The Word Bearers, fanatical zealots, summoned demonic entities and unleashed dark rituals, further destabilizing the Loyalists. The Alpha Legion, masters of deception, infiltrated the Loyalists' ranks, sowing confusion and turning brother against brother. Caught off guard and thoroughly outnumbered, the Loyalist legions fought valiantly against their now treacherous counterparts. Primarch Ferrus Manus, the Gorgon, led the Iron Hands with unwavering determination, but even his indomitable will was tested against these overwhelming odds. Chorus Corvax, the Raven Lord, employed guerrilla tactics and hit-and-run assaults, attempting to disrupt the traitors' formations. Vulcan, the Salamander, and his forces unleashed their fiery arsenal, desperately trying to stem the tide of betrayal. Despite heroic efforts, the Loyalists found themselves outmatched and outmaneuvered. The traitor legions had meticulously planned their betrayal, exploiting weakness and capitalizing on their surprise advantage. The Loyalists suffered heavy losses, with entire companies and contingents wiped out or captured. The traitorous forces showed no mercy to their former brethren, reveling in the bloodshed and chaos that they were unleashing. In the end, the Loyalist legions were forced to retreat, battered and broken. The traitor legions had secured a decisive victory, solidifying their alliance to the arch-traitor Horus and furthering their path towards damnation. The Istvaan III atrocity served as a grim reminder of the horrors of betrayal and the depths to which even the mightiest warriors could fall. The galaxy was ultimately plunged into an era of darkness and treachery, as the Horus Heresy engulfed the Imperium in a devastating civil war. The Maraviglia demonstrated the allure and seductive powers of chaos. The sensory overload experienced by the audience, the uncontrollable emotions, and the frenzied violence all depict the irresistible attraction of Slaanesh's influence, It reveals how easily mortals, and even Astartes, can succumb to the temptations of chaos when exposed directly to its corrupting touch. Fulgrim, as the Primarch of the Emperor's Children, is the driving force behind the Legion's transformation. His presence and participation in the performance signify his surrender to the temptations of excess and his abandonment of his formerly noble ideals. It marks a turning point for the Primarch, as he fully embraces the path of damnation and becomes himself an instrument of Slaanesh. Even as it progressed into a scene of brutality and depravity, he savours the experience, calling back to how, on his homeworld of Chemos, he could experience no such artistry or indulgence. Istvaan V, meanwhile, serves as the backdrop for one of the most pivotal moments in Fulgrim's history, while also cementing his status as a traitor and one of the greatest threats to the Imperium of Man. When the Phoenician and the Gorgon met on the field of battle, Ferrus berated Fulgrim for his treachery against the Emperor and his alliance with the traitor Horus. Ferrus believed his brother to be mad, as the War Master had already been defeated, his forces scattered, and reinforcements from 4 legions were on their way to crush the rebellion completely. Unbeknownst to the Gorgon, those forces would not be on his side. Unable to contain himself any longer, Fulgrim shook his head, relishing the upcoming act of betrayal. He revealed to Ferrus that it was actually he who was naive. Horus would never fall into such a trap. Fulgrim pointed towards the northern edge of the Urgal Depression, showing Ferrus that it was their loyalist forces who were in peril. Ferrus gazed upon a massive army, larger than the initial assault, gathered in the landing zone, armed and prepared for battle. Corax and Vulcan led their forces back to regroup at the drop site, bringing their wounded and dead along with them. They reached out via Vox, requesting medical aid and supplies. However, the line of Astartes atop the northern ridge remained ominously silent. Exhausted warriors from the Raven Guard and Salamanders approached their allies, coming within 100 meters, but to their shock, Horus revealed his treachery and sprung the deadly trap. A lone flare shot up from the Black Fortress, where Horus had established his lair, exploding in a hellish red glow that illuminated the battlefield below. Betrayal erupted from 1,000 guns as their second wave of Astartes revealed their newfound loyalty. Fulgrim laughed at the horror on his brother's face as their supposed allies opened fire upon the Salamanders and Raven Guard, cutting down hundreds in the initial onslaught alone, and many more seconds after, as barrages of bolter fire and missiles tore through their unsuspecting ranks. Amidst the terrifying carnage inflicted upon their forces, the retreating troops of the War Master turned their weapons against the enemy warriors in their midst. Hundreds of sons of Horus and Death Guard descended upon the veteran companies of the Iron Hands. Despite the valiant fight put up by the warriors of the 10th Legion, they were hopelessly outnumbered and soon faced annihilation. Ferrus turned to confront Fulgrim, his anger seething like the molten lava of his homeworld. The 2 Primarchs lunged at each other, Ferrus wielding Fireblade, now repaired, and Fulgrim wielding Forgebreaker. These weapons, once crafted in brotherhood, were now driven by vengeance, clashing in a blaze of energy. The 2 Primarchs traded devastating blows with their immensely powerful weapons. Ferrus swung his flaming sword in fiery arcs, but each strike was deflected by the ebony-hafted hammer. Both warriors fought with the hatred that only divided brothers could muster, their armor battered, torn, and darkened by their fury. The Primarchs exchanged terrible blows, deeply wounding each other in their fierce struggle. As Ferrus mustered the strength to rise and stagger towards the wounded Fulgrim, he cried out, swinging his flaming blade towards his brother's neck. Fulgrim countered with a swift motion, drawing the single-edged, demonically possessed sword he had taken from the Lair Temple. He blocked Ferrus's descending weapon, fueled by the powers of chaos emanating from his blade. Fulgrim felt a surge of diabolical strength allowing him to push back against Ferrus and surprising him with resistance. Fulgrim rose and struck back, his silver blade piercing deeply into Ferrus's breastplate. The Primarch of the Iron Hands cried out, falling to his knees in agonizing pain. Fireblade slipped from his grasp as he gasped fiercely. Fulgrim raised the silver sword, ready to deliver the killing blow to Ferrus. But then, something within him faltered. He couldn't muster the resolve to strike that final blow. In that eternal moment, he realized the magnitude of his mistake in drawing this weapon from the Temple of Laer. He struggled to release the cursed blade that had brought him to this dark point. His grip remained locked onto the weapon, and as he comprehended his profound fall, Fulgrim knew he had gone too far to turn back. The realization dawned upon him that everything he had strived for had been a lie. In a slow, motion-like sequence, Fulgrim witnessed Ferrus reaching for his fallen sword, his fingers closing around the wire-wound grip, reigniting the flames upon the blade as he touched it. Fulgrim's own blade seemed to move of its own accord as he swung it, unable to control his muscles any longer. The daemon-infested sword sliced through the genetically enhanced flesh and bone of one of the Emperor's own sons. The Primarch of the Iron Hands collapsed to the ground, his head severed by the hand of his own beloved brother. Though Fulgrim emerged as victor, he looked down at his battered brother's lifeless body and realized that everything up to that moment had been a lie. Both Primarchs inflicted severe wounds upon one another, but ultimately it was Fulgrim who had dealt that fatal blow. In that moment, the Phoenician realized the gravity of his own actions, and the web of betrayal that had led brother to fight against brother. Overwhelmed by grief, he succumbed to the influence of the daemon, allowing it to possess his body, while his own consciousness would remain trapped within his mind. A particular painting of the Primarch upon the Legion's flagship, the Pride of the Emperor, is said to have then served as the prison within which the true Fulgrim would be detained. Within this battle, Ferrus's fury had been such that he and his elites had forced their way through enemy lines, cutting a bloody path, all so that he could face off against Fulgrim. In his mind, he was ready to slay his brother, now armed with the knowledge of the extent of his heresy. The scene had been set long ago, in the friendship between Fulgrim and Ferrus, in the weapons they had forged for one another. Fireblade had been broken by Ferrus during his altercation when Fulgrim had tried to recruit him, and in turn, Fulgrim had stolen Forgebreaker. This exchange of weapons culminates in the final confrontation, and despite the terrible circumstances in which it takes place, could have been one of honour, where both Primarchs battled with the weapons they themselves had made for the other. But it was not meant to be. While the two fought furiously, both hesitated to end the other. The difference was, Fulgrim had something that pressed him through the hesitation. The Laeran blade, the cause and symbol of his corruption. It compelled him to strike the final blow and behead his brother. It is only after this action that Fulgrim is able to realize his fall from grace. It is truly tragic, the extent of the grief and regret, as he realized his own failings, as he lost what had made him admirable. Humility and dedication turned to pridefulness and obsession. Fulgrim was mentally shattered by this, the madness happening around him, the death of the man who had been his truest friend. In this moment of vulnerability, he gives up. When offered escape, Fulgrim replied, "Yes, I crave the boon of nothingness." He allowed the demon within the Laeran blade to take control, a total submission prompted by hopelessness. And so, through this scene, the last true dregs of who Fulgrim used to be are locked away, leaving only madness in its wake. Of course, the painting mentioned still sits within his flagship, symbolizing who he used to be when he was still himself, still a good man. After the traitors emerged triumphant at Istvaan V, Fulgrim requested a private meeting with the War Master. Horus was delighted when his brother presented him with the gruesome trophy of Ferrus Menace's head, severed as promised. Basking in this achievement, Horus wanted to share the glory with his fellow captains. However, the Primarch of the Emperor's Children informed Horus that Fulgrim lacked the resolve to fulfill his oath, so he took it upon himself to accomplish the task. Suddenly, Horus realized that the being before him was not Fulgrim, but an impostor. Horus threatened to kill this false Fulgrim, boasting that he could easily overpower him. Whatever its reason for revealing itself, violence was not its intention. Instead, it had come to pledge loyalty to Horus's cause. It then disclosed that it was a creature of the warp, a humble servant of the powerful Dark Prince Slaanesh. This greater daemon explained to the horrified Horus how it had taken possession of Fulgrim's mortal body, and expressed its delight with this arrangement. Curious about his brother's fate, Horus inquired further. The daemon inhabiting Fulgrim's body revealed to Horus that Fulgrim was in fact safe, residing within the vessel now controlled by the daemon. Fulgrim was fully aware of all that was happening, but was utterly powerless to intervene. The daemon found great satisfaction in Fulgrim's cries of anguish and regret. Appalled by this turn of events, Horus remained silent in response to the revelation. This demon Fulgrim had pledged allegiance to his cause and was undeniably a potent warp entity. Horus believed it was best to keep this creature as an ally, as he could not afford to be without the support of the Third Legion at this time. However, Horus vowed to destroy the demon and free Fulgrim from his torment when the opportune moment arose, recognizing that no one deserved to endure such a dreadful fate. Yet, he pondered the power required to undo a demon. Horus and the daemon agreed to keep the true nature of the impostor a secret. This creature had no desire to reveal itself, and Horus was convinced that such a revelation would cause significant complications with the other Primarchs dedicated to the traitor's cause. In this meeting between Horus and Daemon Fulgrim, we receive more details about the fate of the Primarch of the Emperor's Children, and it is a terribly cruel one. He is trapped as a prisoner within his own body, only able to suffer as he watches the demon further the goals that Fulgrim had realized were so wrong. In the moment when he had finally come to see the error of his ways, this creature had trapped him on the path by taking control, and would relish sadistically in the pain and anguish this would cause him. While we see here that Horus does genuinely care for Fulgrim, as evidenced by his personal promise to free him from the demon, he sees it as enough of an afterthought, so secondary to his ultimate goals that he accepts the oath of the demon's services. Horus, partially corrupted himself, is willing to pay any price to achieve ultimate victory. 4 days after the devastating Dropsite Massacre on Istvaan V, Horus Lupercal brought together the Primarchs who opposed the Imperium aboard his flagship, the Vengeful Spirit. They were well aware of the upcoming campaign's costs and their roles within it. The traitor fleets were already in motion, and this gathering marked the first time they had assembled as a complete brotherhood within Istvaan. 8 Primarchs were present, though only half of them were physically in the room. Fulgrim, Perturabo, Angron, and Lorgar Aurelian occupied the space, while the other 4 appeared as holographic projections. Conrad Kurz, Mortarion, and Alfarius manifested as flickering grey hololithic simulacra around the table, while Magnus the Red projected on a brighter image from afar, still recovering from the recent burning of Prospero by Leman Russ's space wolves on the Sorcerer's planet. As soon as Lorgar took his seat at the council table, his gaze was fixed upon his brother Fulgrim. The War Master grew increasingly wary of Fulgrim's disregard for established plans and his lack of attention during this crucial gathering. Before the meeting could commence, Lorgar slowly reached for the ornate Crozius mace on his back. As he drew the weapon, a cold, psychic frost began to spread along the armor of those present. Lorgar accused the being resembling Fulgrim of being an impostor. Without warning, he struck the supposed Fulgrim with his mace, sending him crashing against the back wall. Turning his fierce eyes to his other brothers, Lorgar declared that this pretender was not Fulgrim. The other Primarchs present drew their weapons and advanced towards the demon Fulgrim. The War Master tried to calm the enraged Lorgar, but even Horus was taken aback by the changes he observed in Aurelian since Istvaan 5. Lorgar, defiant and clutching his mace, warned his brothers to stay back. Despite Horus's attempts to pacify Lorgar, the Primarch realized that the War Master was already aware that this was not the real Fulgrim. Horus informed the others that he would personally handle the situation and dismiss them all except for Lorgar. Lorgar could see the truth. The being wearing Fulgrim's appearance was a demon of chaos. It had hollowed out Fulgrim's soul and now controlled his lifeless body. Lorgar couldn't comprehend how this had happened or why Horus was protecting such a dark secret. The War Master explained that he hadn't orchestrated Fulgrim's demise. He was merely dealing with the aftermath. Lorgar was, of course, disturbed by the presence of another entity within Fulgrim's body. Horus grew annoyed with his brother's questioning, as Lorgar and Fulgrim had never been close, but Lorgar argued that it mattered because this intrusion defied the natural order. There was no harmony in such a union, unlike his own blessed daemon-possessed sons, the Galvorbak. A living soul had been obliterated to make way for a greedy, unborn demon. During Lorgar's pilgrimage to the Eye of Terror, he had walked in the heart of the warp, where the gods and mortals converged. He knew that this possession was a corruption and a weakness, a perversion of what the Chaos Gods desired from humanity. The ruinous powers sought allies, willing followers, not soulless vessels controlled by their daemons. Using his formidable psychic abilities, Lorgar kept the daemon at bay. Horus warned him that he was killing Fulgrim with these powers, but Lorgar clarified that it was not their brother, but an it, that he could destroy if he wished. Lorgar threatened the demon, vowing to discover its true name and banish it back to the warp. The demon Fulgrim was defenseless against Lorgar's psychic might, and as the War Master attempted to restrain Lorgar by placing a hand on his shoulder, Lorgar commanded him telepathically to remove his hand. Unable to resist, Horus complied, his hand trembling as it withdrew, his eyes filled with tension. Enraged, Lorgar left the council chambers, and Horus noted the change that he had undergone since his encounter with Corax on Istvaan 5's surface. Lorgar replied that everything had changed that night. He then departed to his ship, contemplating the profound corruption he had perceived. In this gathering of the traitor Primarchs, we are shown a scene that highlights Fulgrim's fall. While many have been tempted or tinged with corrupted effects of the ruinous powers, the only one who had fully lost themselves at this point was Fulgrim. Even Lorgar, the one who could be seen as a high priest of chaos, expressed his disdain for what had happened, seeing it as a weakness and looking to free him from the daemon. Horus's care for Fulgrim is seen once again as he tries to protect him, unsure if his brother could survive the purging that Lorgar threatened. Overall, what this presents is a complete and utter fall from grace for the Phoenician. The way his daemon self misbehaves in a childish manner in front of the other Primarchs, the fact he fell entirely to chaos before any of the others, it all shows that the one who was once so respected is now looked upon with disdain, or at best, concern, by his brothers. The members of the Third Legion were oblivious to the fact that their revered leader was struggling fruitlessly against the confines of his own tormented mind. Only Captain Lucius, the most skilled swordsman of the 13th Company, seemed to sense that something was wrong with the Primarch, but he chose to remain silent. The imposter Fulgrim detected the faint touch of warp energy on Lucius, and presented him with the silver daemon blade imbued with a fraction of Lair's essence. Lucius now wielded the more powerful Cainbrak anatheme, a gift from Horus himself. Although the Lair demon sword had lost its spirit, it still held residual power that would aid Lucius in the dark times ahead. Following a conclave on Horus's flagship, the Daemon Fulgrim and the Emperor's children were commanded to assist in the Mechanicum's civil war on Mars. However, the increasingly unpredictable Primarch decided to defy his brother's orders and instead led his legion on an assault on Prismatica 5, a Mechanicum crystal mining world. Lord Commander Eidolon, unable to tolerate his lord's erratic behaviour and the disloyalty of the senior legion, questioned Fulgrim's command. This proved a fatal mistake on Eidolon's part. Unable to appease his enraged lord, Eidolon's feeble attempt to defend himself unwittingly further incented the Primarch. Paranoia consumed Fulgrim as he believed Eidolon was mocking him and planned to betray him. With lightning speed, the Primarch drew the anatheme from its sheath and killed his once favoured son. Holding Eidolon's severed head over the casks of victory wine, Fulgrim let the blood from his gruesome trophy mix with the potent drink, which was then shared among the senior members of the Third Legion's inner circle. Rather than mourning the death of Eidolon, who was in fact widely despised, Lucius, the rising champion of the Emperor's children, saw it as another indication of Fulgrim's increasingly erratic behaviour. Troubled by his lord's transformation, Lucius delved deeper into the matter after receiving dark and foreboding dreams about a portrait of the Primarch that was sealed off in La Fenice. The room had been cordoned off by the Phoenix Guard after the corrupting influence of the Maraviglia had affected the Legion. Already concerned about Fulgrim's strange moods and unpredictable actions, Lucius closely observed his every move. He became even more suspicious when he noticed Fulgrim's lack of camaraderie and disregard for Legion traditions. But what truly aroused Lucius's doubts was the realization that his Primarch's swordsmanship had suddenly become inferior to his own skills. It became clear that Fulgrim was not who he appeared to be. Lucius's suspicions were confirmed when he witnessed Fulgrim employing powerful psychic abilities during the Legion's assault on Prismatica 5, openly battling a Warhound-class Titan of the Mechanicum. Lucius continued to receive disturbing dreams in his sleep, which led him to follow the clues embedded in these prophetic visions. Defying a standing order, Lucius went against the Primarch's commands and secretly investigated La Fenice, the theatre located on the flagship. It was there that the Emperor's children had fully succumbed to the corrupting influence of Slaanesh, awakened by the operatic symphony known as the Maraviglia. Thoroughly examining the ruined chamber, Fulgrim discovered the magnificent portrait above the stage amidst the wreckage. Even in the fading light, the portrait's magnificence was undeniable. Encased in a glorious golden frame, the canvas captured one's attention with its breathtaking perfection. Fulgrim, adorned in resplendent purple and gold armour, stood depicted before the grand gates of the Heliopolis, the heart of their flagship, with the fiery wings of a phoenix soaring behind him. The light of the legendary bird illuminated his armour, each polished plate seeming to shimmer with the fire's heat, while the golden hair flowed majestically. The portrait flawlessly portrayed the Primarch of the Emperor's children, capturing every aspect of his grandeur and the essence that made Fulgrim a vision of beauty. It was evident that no greater warrior had ever existed, nor would exist, in the galaxy again. Merely glimpsing such a flawless work of art was enough to reaffirm that wonder still existed in the galaxy. Fixating on the painting's eyes, Lucius discerned the horror within his Primarch's gaze, a horror that no mortal painter could have rendered. Exquisite agony burned within the painted eyes, and the dark pools seemed to follow Lucius's movements. He concluded that his Primarch was somehow trapped within the painting, and the entity parading as their lord was in fact an impostor. Determined to liberate his Primarch by any means necessary, Lucius clandestinely assembled the Brotherhood of the Phoenix, an exclusive warrior lodge that he trusted implicitly. This brotherhood consisted of a select group of Emperor's children who shared Lucius's concerns about Fulgrim's nature. They had observed the Primarch's descent into madness and were convinced that the being masquerading as Fulgrim was, in fact, a malevolent entity from the warp. Their ultimate goal was to free the true Fulgrim from his captivity within the painting and vanquish the impostor. With utmost secrecy, Lucius and his brotherhood devised a plan to confront the impostor and expose its true identity. They knew that they had to tread carefully, as the creature had already ensnared the minds of many within the Legion. They began spreading subtle dissent upon the Legion, planting seeds of doubt about the validity of their Primarch's actions and decisions. As Daemon Fulgrim's hold weakened slightly, Lucius and the Brotherhood seized the opportunity to strike. They launched a surprise attack on the impostor during a grand feast held in his honor, exploiting the moment of chaos to confront the being and reveal the truth to the Legion. The daemon, sensing the threat, unleashed its powers, summoning demonic forces to help defend it. A fierce battle ensued within the halls of the Pride of the Emperor. Lucius and the Brotherhood fought valiantly, with determination bolstered by the unwavering loyalty to the true Fulgrim. They wielded their weapons with unparalleled skill, cutting through hordes of demons and corrupted Emperor's children alike. In the heart of the battle, Lucius faced off against the impostor, engaging in a deadly duel. Their swords clashed in a dazzling display of skill and power. Lucius, drawing upon the remnants of the Laeran demon sword's essence within the anatheme, channeled its latent power, strengthening his strikes with the powers of the warp. With a final, devastating blow, Lucius struck down the daemon Fulgrim, severing its connection to the warp and banishing it back to where it came from. As the creature's form dissipated, a surge of energy emanated from the painting of Fulgrim, causing it to crack and crumble. In that moment, the true Fulgrim emerged from the shattered remains of the painting. He appeared weakened and disoriented, his mind scarred from the torment he had endured, but was free now from the clutches of the impostor, and his legion rejoiced at the return. Lucius, battered but victorious, knelt before his Primarch, pledging his unwavering loyalty and vowing to serve him faithfully in the battles to come. Fulgrim, grateful for Lucius's steadfastness and the Brotherhood's sacrifice, named them the new Phoenix Guard, his personal retinue and protectors. With the impostor vanquished and the true Primarch restored, the Emperor's children began a long process of purging the corruption that had infested their legion. Under Fulgrim's guidance, they sought redemption and sought to reclaim their former glory as warriors of perfection. The path would not be easy, but the Emperor's children, led by Lucius and the Phoenix Guard, were determined to face their past and forge a new future. What we see contained within this story of Lucius freeing Fulgrim from the possessing demon is an interesting look at the ethics of a traitor legion. They do not look to free him so they can be redeemed in the eyes of the Emperor and fight for the Imperium. but they seek to have him return to being a respectable Primarch by their own standards. The Emperor's children, still defined by a quest for perfection, were ashamed to be led by a creature that couldn't obey orders or present itself with any level of decorum. While the daemon did manage to spread its corruption further, debasing some of the Legion's ranks, it was thanks to the efforts of Lucius that Fulgrim was freed once more. Interestingly, when we see Fulgrim return, he does not repent for his past sins, despite the doubt that we saw him express. The pain stemming from killing Ferrus, he now seems unburdened, prepared to recommit to following the War Master. At this time, Fulgrim is at his most mysterious, his motives difficult to discern. All that can be imagined is that being controlled by the demon has changed him and his goals. The image of perfection that started out as the Emperor and then became Horus is now unknown.
During Horus's rebellion, the Iron Warriors seized the opportunity to humble their formidable foes, the Imperial Fists, upon the secluded planet of Hydra Cordatus, recently brought under Imperial control by the Sons of Dorn. Following their triumph, Perturabo received news that Fulgrim and his Emperor's Children Legion wished to meet and discuss a matter of great significance. Although Fulgrim hadn't revealed the true purpose of his visit, he assured Perturabo that it was something extraordinary. Perturabo was aware of his brother's tendency for dramatics, which had only intensified since the Third Legion joined the forces with the War Master. While Perturabo didn't consider any of his fellow Primarchs as close, Fulgrim's pursuit of perfection had once created a common ground between them, allowing them to converse as trusted comrades in arms, if not beloved brothers. The Emperor's children sought perfection through constant progress, while the Iron Warriors achieved it through ultimate discipline and meticulous planning. Two distinct paths to the same eventual objective. Perturabo suspected that Fulgrim's visit was related to the upcoming campaign against Mars, an essential step before they could challenge Terra. He believed Fulgrim sought the Iron Warriors' assistance in breaching the forged cities of the Mechanicum. If Perturabo's hunch was correct, he wanted his legion to have a well-devised plan in place to achieve that objective. Until further orders arrived, Perturabo decided to entertain his brother and listen to what Fulgrim had to say. While making preparations for the impending campaign, Perturabo received unexpected news that the Emperor's children had landed on Hydra Cordatus without prior notice. Over 300 dropcraft had touched down beyond the valley where the Iron Warriors had established their camp. The 4th Legion swiftly assembled in formation to pay homage to the 3rd Legion, assigning a vanguard to receive them. Tens of thousands of Thor-Katai Imperial Army troops stood in organized ranks, facing 200 grand battalions of Iron Warriors, 50,000 clad in amber dust-burnished armor. Such a display of power and grandeur hadn't been witnessed since the bloodshed on Istvaan V. Nevertheless, Perturabo and his senior officers gazed in astonishment at the ostentatious procession of noise, colour and spectacle emerging from the 3rd Legion's landing site into the valley. Fulgrim and his Emperor's children were unrecognizable compared to the honourable warriors they once were. Perturabo sensed a fundamental change within the Emperor's children, but couldn't fathom the purpose behind the disfigurements and degradations their warriors now bore. The Emperor's children displayed their changes most brazenly when taking part in what would be called the Cacophony Parade, where their disharmony and lack of tact and discipline would be clearest. When Perturabo questioned his brother as to the meaning of this abomination of a performance, Fulgrim would only reply with unbridled enthusiasm, pleased with how his legion had become further and further lost in the aspects of Slaanesh, within excess and indulgence. In the inner sanctum of his command bunker, Fulgrim met with his brother Primarch and presented an irresistible offer
that Perturabo couldn't turn down. The means to manifest every desire of the Lord of Iron, ensuring they would never disappoint, never fail to meet his highest expectations, and never be outshined. Fulgrim proposed a union of their forces in a glorious and decisive battle, one that could tip the scales of the War Master's rebellion. Although Perturabo harboured suspicions of his brother's intentions, and was off-put by the behaviours of his Emperor's children, he considered that this joint endeavour might foster understanding through shared purpose. Fulgrim disclosed their objective: to journey into the warp storm that had haunted Perturabo's dreams throughout his life. Within it lay a forbidden ancient Xenos weapon, known as the Angel Exterminatus, concealed in its own grave of doom. This weapon possessed unimaginable power, to the extent that even the stars turned against it, rather than let it escape its prison. As their plans progressed, it became gradually clearer and clearer over the course of the endeavour that Perturabo could not tolerate working with Fulgrim or his legion in their current state. To rectify this, he brought Fulgrim into his tent for a curt discussion, with attention drawn to a mechanical model of a warhound titan upon his desk. After some discussion, when Fulgrim leaned in to investigate the item in question, Perturabo slammed his head down upon it and the desk, proceeding to badly beat him as his own honour guard restrained Fulgrim's. Without allowing his brother a word, Perturabo scolded him on his lack of discipline and that within his legion, and for his own behaviour, stating that he would take control of the mission to ensure success and order. When Fulgrim gave his reply, anticipating that Perturabo wished to make a lapdog out of him, he refuted it and declared that he wanted an equal. With the altercation ended for the time, they both continued towards their shared objective. Despite being supposedly free of the influence of the demon, Fulgrim still campaigns under Horus for the time. As he begins to weave a greater plan, one involving Perturabo, we see hints of what his true goal may be, beyond the grander aspirations of perfection: power. What is made especially clear here is the difference between the Iron Warriors and the Emperor's children. The stark contrast between the orderly and well-drilled welcome they presented to Fulgrim's legion was met, in turn, with a mad parade of debased space marines who could barely hold back from acting upon their basest of whims and desires. The fall from grace witnessed by Perturabo likely concerned him deeply, and even enraged him, but more than anything else, he was disappointed in Fulgrim. During their meeting, he attempted to beat sense into the Phoenician, before demanding he did not want him under him, he wanted an equal, someone deserving to stand by his side, that he could trust and respect. Tragically, Fulgrim could never be that brother to him, ever again. Unbeknownst to both the Emperor's children and the Iron Warriors, a disparate group of loyalist Astartes survivors from the devastating Dropsite Massacre on Istvaan V was relentlessly pursuing them, determined to stop the traitorous forces at any cost. These loyalist space marines had managed to escape the Istvaan system aboard an Iron Hand strike cruiser named the Sisypheum, gathering survivors from the Urgal Depression on Istvaan V. The crew of the Sisypheum consisted mainly of Iron Hand's Astartes and their mortal serfs, but it also included surviving warriors from the Salamanders and a lone Raven Guard Astartes. Escaping the Istvaan system had involved nerve-wracking dashes under enemy fire and stealthy maneuvers through the traitor's orbital blockade, culminating in a desperate race to reach the Gravipause, the minimum safe distance for a warp jump. The Sisypheum had managed to evade the trap, but not without significant losses. In the following months, the Sisypheum embarked on a series of hit-and-run attacks against traitor forces along the galaxy's northern frontiers, inflicting damage like a solitary predator lurking in the depths of a dark ocean. Their primary objective was to disrupt and harass traitor forces, attempting to flank through the Segmentum Obscurus. They targeted scout craft cartography ships, and slow-moving supply vessels laden with mortal troops, ammunition, and weapons. Their objective was to cause disruption and hinder the traitors until they could establish contact with other groups of loyalist forces who had also managed to escape the massacre. A strategy was devised among the surviving commanders, positioning themselves as thorns on the side of the traitorous Leviathan, distracting it from the vital attacks. At Kavor Sarta, Sabak Wayland of the Iron Hands and Nakona Sharokin, the lone Ravenguard survivor, successfully captured an unlingual cipher host known as a Cryptos. These hybrid abominations, created by the Dark Mechanicum, had previously made the traitors' code network impossible to decipher. With the Cryptos in their possession, the Loyalist commanders gained access to the traitors' communications. Upon deciphering the cracked messages, Ulrak Branthan, the Iron Hands captain of the Sisypheum, ordered the ship to embark on a journey to Hydra Cordatus, where the traitor Primarchs were scheduled to meet, as indicated by the intercepted communications. Upon learning of Fulgrim's intention to enter the Eye of Terror and retrieve the Angel Exterminatus, the crew of the Sisypheum swiftly set course towards the Warp Rift, aided by a mysterious Eldar guide, with the objective of foiling the traitor's plan to acquire the enigmatic Xenos weapon. The combined fleet of Iron Warriors and Emperor's Children had set their course for the enigmatic Eldar word of Idris, a once beloved realm of the Eldar goddess Liliath. Idris was among the fabled Crone Worlds, which once formed the heart of the ancient Eldar Empire. However, these worlds were consumed by the birth of the Chaos god Slanesh, resulting in the creation of the colossal warp rift known as the Eye of Terror. Despite its perilous location at the center of this chaotic maelstrom, Idris somehow remained fixed, shielded from destruction by the gravitational forces of a supermassive black hole that lurked within the eternal storm. From this center, the Eye of Terror ejected unfathomable matters into the void, serving as a dark gateway to an unknown realm and a fearsome singularity whose gravitational pull devoured light, matter, space, and time at its annihilating core. The Primarch's ultimate objective lay within reach. The sepulchre of Isha's doom, situated at the heart of the citadel, known as Amon Naishak Kalis. This citadel stood as a sentinel at the entrance of the prison tomb that contained the Angel Exterminatus. Prior to launching a full-scale assault, the Iron Warriors initiated preliminary orbital bombardment around the citadel, a standard protocol when preparing for an assault on a potentially hostile environment. A torrent of fiery devastation scarred the surface of Idris, instantly reducing structures that stood for millennia to rubble. A desolate ring of pulverized earth encircled the citadel, isolating its walls, towers, and temples from the rest of the planet's structures. In the aftermath of this orbital barrage, squadrons of Thunderhawks, Stormbirds, Warhawks, and heavy planetary landers launched from crowded embarkation decks. Enormous transport vessels descended to low orbit, disgorging thousands of troop carriers, armoured lifters, and supply ships. Majestic and imposing mass landers, cushioned by gravity, moved with deliberate slowness. Two Titans from the Legio Mortis strode onto the battlefield, heralding only the first wave of the invasion. 8 more waves would follow, as the martial might of 2 entire Space Marine legions, alongside their auxiliary Imperial Army forces, made planetfall. 5 hours later, the traitors initiated their assault, even though their fortifications were not fully completed. The path to the citadel of Amon Naishakalis appeared undefended and unopposed. Perturabo, ever cautious, had his Iron Warriors take up defensive positions outside the walls in a layered barbican formation, safeguarding the traitor legion's retreat. Fulgrim's forces fragmented into individual war bands, varying in size from 100 warriors to groups of nearly 1,000. Each autonomous squad seemed to be led by a captain, though their intricate adornments on their armour made it difficult to ascertain specific rankings. Leaving the fortified bridgehead behind, Perturabo led his iron warriors and the Emperor's children into the heart of Amon-Nai-Shakalis. The sepulchre of Isha's doom stood as an immense palace, adorned with bulbous morn towers and elegant ivory-roofed domes. Unbeknownst to the traitors, they were silently being observed by loyalist Astartes of the Sisypheum, despite being overwhelmingly outnumbered. The loyalist legionnaires devised a plan to find an alternate route into the colossal sepulchre. As the two Primarchs neared their ultimate objective, Fulgrim urged his stern brother to hurry, displaying impatience. Perturabo took the opportunity to observe Fulgrim and his assembled host. His brother seemed to emit a faint sweat, but it was not ordinary perspiration. Perturabo enhanced vision allowed him to perceive a subtle radiance emanating from Fulgrim, a phenomenon beyond the capabilities of regular Astartes' sight. He pondered whether Fulgrim was aware of this light, and concluded that he must be. Fulgrim's armour strained against his body, his features appeared fatigued, as if he relied solely on willpower to remain upright. His captains displayed similar signs of strain, resembling restless hounds. Some of Fulgrim's Lord Commanders also exhibited the same unearthly radiance as their Primarch, a deathly glow unfitting for living beings. Perturabo harboured deep distrust toward Fulgrim, fully expecting betrayal of some kind from his brother. Nevertheless, the Lord of Iron pressed onward, determined to complete their mission. As they approached the heart of the temple, the power within Idris reacted with hatred towards the followers of Slaanesh, known to the Eldar as She Who Thirsts, awakening its guardians from their slumber. Thousands of crystalline statues came to life, stirring from their immobility. Their movements were rigid, reminiscent of sleepers awakened from an aeons-long slumber. The gems at the centre of their bulbous heads infused vibrant colours into their glassy bodies, making them appear far less fragile. This army of wraiths consisted of the deceased Eldar of Idris. Both the traitor forces outside the citadel and those within were swiftly attacked from all directions by this revenant army. The Eldar constructs emerged in vast numbers, their movements resembling that of automatons with a grotesquely organic quality. While Perturabo fought for his life, Fulgrim seized the opportunity to slip away amidst the chaos. Realizing his brother's intentions, the Lord of Iron stepped into the green glow emanating from the centre of the colossal chamber. Perturabo recognized that this was no elemental energy or mechanical force, but the distilled essence of all those who had perished there. Descending endlessly in a spiral, Perturabo approached a point of light that remained unchanged no matter how far he travelled. The descent seemed interminable until he finally reached the bottom. Fulgrim stood at the origin of a slender bridge, stretching towards the centre of the spherical chamber of unimaginable proportions that defied sanity. The bridges were anchored on the equator, and a number of others extended towards a seething ball of jade light, resembling a miniature sun. It became apparent that Idris was a hollow world, with this colossal void at its core, housing an impossibly bright sun. Perturabo confronted his brother, realizing that there was never an Angel Exterminatus. Fulgrim confirmed that the weapon did not exist, yet, as Perturabo himself was destined to become the Angel Exterminatus. Perturabo retorted, mocking Fulgrim's penchant for narcissism, considering this delusion to be the grandest of them all. Unamused by Fulgrim's explanation, Perturabo took a step towards his brother, wielding Forgebreaker, fully intent on killing him. Fulgrim uttered only a single word, its nightmarish syllables assaulting Perturabo's mind, causing him to stumble and kneel. Fulgrim, now in a position of power, revealed the reason behind his brother's draining energy. When Fulgrim had presented Perturabo with a gift on Hydra Caudatus, it was a folded cloak made of the softest ermine, trimmed with foxbat fur, and adorned with endlessly repeating spirals in a golden ratio. A skull, its form flattened by time and wear, held a remarkable centerpiece upon it. Nestled in the forehead of that skull was a gemstone of immense size, reminiscent of a clenched fist. Its appearance was captivating, black in hue, yet interlaced with delicate strands of golden thread. As their journey progressed towards the heart of the Eye of Terror, the gemstones at its core, the skull-edged cloakpin, underwent a remarkable transformation. The once ebony gem now radiated a solid golden glow, pulsating with an internal rhythm akin to a heartbeat. This gem, known as the Mogatar Stone, or the Harvester, had gradually sapped Perturabo's vitality and life force. Through the Lord of Iron's sacrifice, Fulgrim believed he would finally attain apotheosis. United in purpose, the two Primarchs ascended, their rise guided by a radiant shaft of light, emerging into the maelstrom of chaos that unfolded at the heart of the sepulchre. The Primarch of the Emperor's Children forcefully pushed his brother aside, causing Perturabo to fall and land with a jarring crash at the edge of the shaft. Blood trailed from Perturabo's chest, forming a crimson arc in the air. Motionless and broken, the Lord of Iron lay on the ground, his life fading. Every Astartes in the chamber turned their attention to the Primarch, sensing that there was a significant event about to unfold. The Phoenician had undergone a transformation since his arrival on the planet, now floating above the shaft that no longer emitted its vibrant green torrent, but instead emitted a fading glow. Fulgrim's armor shimmered with vitality, as if containing the radiance of countless suns ready to burst forth. His eyes, dark and doll-like, appeared as twin black holes, offering glimpses into unimaginable experience and sensation only comprehensible to madmen or those willing to go to extreme lengths to taste them. In the midst of Fulgrim's imminent triumph, Perturabo, having regained some of his former strength, stood up and held the Mogatar stone in his hand. Walking towards Fulgrim, he extended that hand with the stone over the chamber's central shaft. Perturabo searched his brother's eyes, hoping for any sign of remorse or shame for the path that they had taken, but found nothing. He felt his heart break, realizing that the Fulgrim he had once known was forever lost. He had never imagined anyone could descend so far beyond redemption. Perturabo understood his brother no longer aspired to be an angel, he sought godhood. Perturabo reminded Fulgrim that humanity had outgrown such beings long ago, disgusted with these desires. With disdain, Perturabo hurled the stone into the depths of the chamber. Suddenly, a barrage of bolter fire erupted, causing several Emperor's Children Astartes to be thrown from their feet. Clad in dark armor, adorned with mailed fist symbols, a group of Space Marines charged towards the traitor forces. They were the Iron Tenth, the Iron Hands. The loyalist Iron Hands clashed with the Emperor's Children and the Iron Warriors, exchanging streams of gunfire between them. The battle intensified quickly, closing in on the two Primarchs at the center of the chamber. Perturabo knelt, weakened, while Fulgrim remained connected to him, as if bound by an unbreakable bond. Amid the chaos, one loyalist, Sharokin of the Raven Guard, obtained the fallen stone. Instinctively understanding that Fulgrim desired it, he knew it had to be destroyed. Taking a bolter from a fallen Emperor's Children Astartes, he aimed at the strange black and gold stone and pulled the trigger. The release of the chaotic relic's energy revitalized the weakened Perturabo. Fulgrim's body responded in resonance, as the stone contained not only the strength it had stolen from Perturabo, but also their combined essence. A power greater than the sum of its parts, capable of fueling a brutal ascent, achievable only through the life force of two Primarchs. Fulgrim's armor disintegrated, leaving his grotesquely swollen body exposed, radiating intense heat. Spectral flames of pink and purple danced around him, eagerly awaiting any lapse in his focus to consume him. As Perturabo struggled to stand upright, he shouldered Forgebreaker. The Phoenician, perceiving his imminent demise in Perturabo's eyes, grinned, aware that his brother had to be the one to end him. He swung the mighty hammer in a wide arc, splitting Fulgrim's body open. It was done. Perturabo had swung his warhammer with devastating force, causing Fulgrim's body to explode in a burst of energy. The resulting cry echoed through the chamber as a shrieking birth scream. An intense explosion of pure force erupted from Fulgrim's destroyed form, engulfing the tower in blinding light that was too dazzling to gaze upon and impossible to ignore. The radiant brilliance served as the center of attention, a rebirth in fire as new flesh emerged from the remnants of the old. Every eye in the chamber turned towards the perfect light, even though it threatened to blind or drive them to madness. Through partially closed fingers and shimmering reflection, the surviving combatants beheld a sight both magnificent and terrible. A combination of agonizing death and violent rebirth. A figure floated amidst the brilliance, and Perturabo took a moment to comprehend the impossibility of what he saw. It was Fulgrim, stripped of his defiling ornaments, naked and unblemished, as perfect as the day the Emperor had conceived him. Fulgrim's body contorted and transformed, fluid and malleable, as if shaped by an invisible sculptor on a spinning wheel. His legs extended, fusing together into a serpentine tail, covered in reptilian scales and chitinous armor plates. Perturabo moved hesitantly toward this being born from his brother's demise, filled with despair at the loss of his true brother. Perturabo had shattered Fulgrim's mortal shell, but what remained was an ethereal manifestation of light, energy, soul, and desire. It was a creation of will, birthing itself through its own yearning for existence. Fulgrim's face displayed an expression of agonizing rapture, a pain endured for the pleasure it promised. 2 obsidian horns sprouted from his brow, curving back over his skull while leaving his flawless face untouched. Fulgrim ascended into chaos, becoming a prince of the Neverborn, a lord of the ruinous powers, and the chosen champion of Slaanesh. As the newborn Daemon Prince departed, the first of the traitor Primarchs to achieve demonic apotheosis, he left Perturabo with a cryptic message of future reunion and the renewal of bonds. Raising his hands, Fulgrim and the Emperor's children, Chaos Space Marines, vanished in a burst of teleportation energy. With the disappearance of the Emperor's children, the crone world of Idris began to crumble. The power at its core had vanished, and the life forces of the deceased Eldar that had sustained it were fading. The planet was now doomed to be consumed by the immense force of the supermassive black hole residing at the heart of the Eye of Terror. On the other side of the chasm, the remaining Iron Hands gathered their wounded and retreated from the collapsing world. They cast resentful glances at Perturabo, but knowing they couldn't survive a confrontation with the Lord of Iron, they chose to leave the doomed planet. Perturabo allowed their departure and led his warriors out of the crumbling citadel. Once aboard the Iron Blood, his flagship, he observed the final death throes of the Eldar's crone world. The Iron Blood strained to escape orbit, but the forces emanating from the Eye of Terror fought back relentlessly. Several smaller vessels in the Iron Warrior's survivor fleet had already succumbed to the pool, disappearing into the black hole's powerful energies. Only the capital ships had engines strong enough to resist, but this resistance was temporary. Perturabo's Triarchs stood by his side, awaiting command. The Lord of Iron declared that they always moved forward and never back. They would venture into the black hole. Although his senior commanders believed it to be suicidal, Perturabo reminded them of Fulgrim's promise. The Iron Warriors were not destined to die within this eye, and there was only one path forward. His warriors carried out the orders, and the Legion fleet plunged deep into the heart of the Eye of Terror. I've combined these 3 parts into one analysis, as to allow for a cohesive and complete examination of Fulgrim's apotheosis. While we witnessed the Primarch express doubt and regret upon the death of Ferrus Manus, the version of Fulgrim that emerged after being freed from the grip of the Laeran blade daemon was something different from what we had ever seen. From where I am standing, we can split Fulgrim into a number of phases of development: pre-heresy Fulgrim, post-Laeran blade Fulgrim, and post-painting Fulgrim. Each of these can be defined by their own perceptions and goals, by the people they idolize and strive to become like or learn from. Pre-heresy Fulgrim idolized the Emperor of Mankind, while post-Laeran blade Fulgrim idolized Horus. Post-painting Fulgrim, however, idolizes himself. He idolizes his own potential, and is willing to do anything to attain the perfection that he believes he can embody, which is demonstrated by the fact he is willing to sacrifice Perturabo to do so. While the Primarch of the Iron Warriors does survive, it is worth highlighting that Fulgrim's lowest moment wasn't killing Ferrus Manus, a brother and friend. Yet, in this plot, he willingly presses towards such an outcome again, all out of selfishness, for the sake of his own ambition. We can, of course, ascertain that Slaanesh guided him to this outcome, promising greatness in whispers and signs, and appropriately leading Fulgrim to reach his apotheosis upon an ancient world of Eldar, who themselves reached their end at the hands of Slaanesh so long ago. When their forces reached the core of the world, and the betrayal is revealed, Perturabo had already predicted it. He had hardened his heart to the pain of this, but it clearly still hurt him, as Fulgrim had once been someone he respected, and he expressed his desire for him to be that once more. Opposite this, Fulgrim seemed not to care, seeing his ascension as something well worth the price. By draining the energy from Perturabo and the core of the Eldar world, he becomes his own image of perfection. Across the story, it is referred to as apotheosis. Apotheosis can be defined as the highest point in the development of something, a culmination or climax. It can also be defined as the elevation of someone to divine status, or perfection. It was the strike for Perturabo, swinging Forgebreaker, the weapon Fulgrim had built for Ferrus, that twisted apart his form and allowed for the change to occur, a poetic tragedy of twisted circumstance. Fulgrim's ascended form depicts a duality of serpentine and angelic features. This split in aesthetics symbolizes the conflict within Fulgrim, torn between his noble self and the corrupting influence of Slaanesh. The serpent represents temptation, deceit, and the serpentine allure of excess and pleasure, while the angelic aspect represents the fallen beauty and twisted elegance he once possessed. Fulgrim leaves his brother to the collapsing world, but stating they would meet again, a promise that, despite all the deception and lies, Perturabo believed enough to allow his ship to be taken into the Eye of Terror. The scene of Fulgrim paying his price of ascension, with the cost being the energies of Perturabo, mirror his killing of Ferrus, as when Ferrus was beheaded, Fulgrim allowed a daemon to inhabit his body, but with the sacrifice of Perturabo, he ascends to become one, as was heralded by the words of Lorgar. Over the next 7 years that followed the massacre on Istvaan V, Horus's rebellion spread across the galaxy, consuming the entire Imperium in the flames of a horrific civil war, known to history as the Horus Heresy. By the time the final battle of Terra had begun, the Emperor's children had become only shadows of their former glorious selves, wholly consumed by the desires of Slaanesh, with every trace of decency long lost. While the other traitor legions assaulted the Imperial Palace, the Emperor's children instead launched themselves upon the innocent citizens of Terra, engaging in a mad parade of terror and mutilation that only barely began to satiate their all-consuming Slaaneshi-inspired hunger for hedonistic pleasure, pain, and sensation. Billions of Terrans were used as human guinea pigs, or raw materials in the Emperor's children's constant desire to create ever more powerful stimulants, or as demonic hosts to bring out Slaaneshi demons, or were simply slain outright to allow a traitor marine the fleeting enjoyment brought on by the sensation of brutal murder. Weary of the mundane indulgences of his legion following the Horus Heresy, Fulgrim, now a demon prince of Slaanesh, withdrew to a daemon world within the Eye of Terror, which he christened Kallax, after the capital city of his lost homeworld, Chemos. Over the course of countless Terran centuries, he meticulously reshaped Kallax to mirror the splendor of his former domain, obsessively recreating the circumstances of his arrival. Fulgrim now occupies himself by reenacting the ancient battles that once united his homeworld, endlessly striving for the elusive perfect victory that could rewrite his own history. At times, he even permits his adversaries to emerge triumphant. Even to this day, numerous warbands of Emperor's children and agents of the Inquisition Ordo Malleus tirelessly scour the galaxy in search of this enigmatic world. Only a select few individuals have managed to discover it, occasionally through invitation by its malevolent master, while others stumble upon it by chance. After his ascension to daemonhood, Fulgrim's journey takes a melancholic turn as he retreats to a daemon world, seeking solace and entertainment within simulated echoes of his past. This retreat reflects the emptiness and boredom that plagues Fulgrim, despite his newfound power and perceived perfection. In a parallel with the Eldar who fell to Slaanesh before him, Fulgrim discovers that unbridled indulgence and unrestricted slaughter failed to satiate his desires. The departure to a daemon world can be seen as a manifestation of Fulgrim's inner turmoil, and his complete inability to find fulfillment, even in the realm of chaos. Despite being granted the freedom to pursue his every whim and desire, the former Primarch found himself trapped in a cycle of repetitive simulations, attempting to recapture the fleeting moments of pleasure and satisfaction he once experienced. Interesting to note is that his chosen recreation is neither a time in service to the Emperor, nor in that to chaos. Instead, he obsesses over a simpler time, where he only strove to better the world upon which he was raised. This conclusion underscores the tragedy of Fulgrim's story. His pursuit of perfection and the allure of excess led him down a path of corruption, only to leave him disillusioned and unfulfilled. It serves almost as a cautionary tale, illustrating the hollowness and futility in seeking perfection. Fulgrim's boredom and weariness highlight the inherent limitations of indulgence and the transient nature of satisfaction. It emphasizes the tragic irony that, even with the vast power and perceived perfection of his ascended form, Fulgrim finds himself trapped in a cycle of repetition, unable to escape the emptiness that consumes him. It is a stark reminder that true fulfillment and purpose cannot be found in unending indulgence or the pursuit of personal power or pleasure alone. Throughout their existence, however, Fulgrim never discarded his legion's name. The fact they chose to remain as Emperor's children seems like an embracing of the tragic irony after their fall to chaos. It highlights the stark contrast between their noble aspirations and the corruption that consumed them. The Legion's descent into the clutches of Slaanesh, the chaos god of excess and pleasure, represents a twisted perversion of their initial ideals and the tragic betrayal of their name. Thank you to anyone who is still here or awake to hear this, and I hope you enjoyed the story of Fulgrim and the insights that I tried to provide along the way. If you guys seem like you enjoy it, I'll keep going in and examine every Primarch, and then possibly other characters in the Warhammer 40k universe. You can comment what Primarch you want me to cover next, and I'll decide based on that. If you stuck around, I encourage you to subscribe. If I can reach 1,000 subscribers, I'll be able to spend a lot more time on these videos, and help provide you guys audio to paint or sleep to. Thanks again.